Do we have, oh, hello, 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 hello? Do we have the ability to go live?
Madam Chair, you are live.
Okay. Give me 2 seconds here while we get everybody in their places. And at 5:02, I will call to order the Finance Committee for May 28th. And if you're ready, Director Oster, if we could get a roll call, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Councillor Cassett,
Here.
Councillor Lindell, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Lee Garcia,
Here.
Chair Romero Worth.
I'm here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, are there changes to our agenda tonight? I think there are, right?
Madam Chair, we do have one change from staff. We request to remove item D from the agenda.
Changes from the committee, and if not, is there a motion? Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight as amended. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That motion passes. Oh, do I have to do roll calls because I have a counselor on Zoom?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's rewind. Director Oster, can you give me a roll call on approval of the agenda?
Certainly, Madam Chair. So the motion is to approve the agenda as amended. And the motion was made by Councillor Faulkner, seconded by Councillor Lee Garcia, Councillor Cassett,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell, Councillor Faulkner,
Yes.
Councillor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, so we do have a number of items pulled off of consent this evening. I believe there are 4, if I'm counting correctly. Do you want to run us through those?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Yes, there are 4 items that have been removed from consent for discussion. That is item M, item Q, item W, and item AA.
Anything else the committee would like to hear tonight? Is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. If we could get a roll call, please.
Certainly, Councillor Cassett,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. We don't have presentations tonight, so we'll just dive right in. We do have about an hour and a half. I don't think we'll need the full time. To run through these items off of consent, but just so that the committee knows, we do, as everyone I think is aware, we have another meeting here at 6:30. Okay, so we'll dive right into M. This is a request for approval of a professional services contract with RMKM Architecture for Phase 1 programming and design of the 21st Century Fogelson Library and Community Center at Midtown Santa Fe in the total amount of $226,870, including New Mexico gross receipts tax for a 4-year term. We have Tim Farrell, our facilities division property development manager, and I think we have Sam Burnett too, providing moral support. So thanks for being here. I pulled this item because I wanted to hear a little bit about where we are on the library, and I think you can address that, and if not, I'll follow up with whoever I need to later. But we were doing a study, weren't we? And we were gonna figure out what a modern library looked like, and then I saw this, and now we're hiring an architectural firm to dive right in. So I guess maybe I missed a step or two. Can you kind of give us a lay of where we've been, where we're going, and where we are, and make sure, and I apologize for that tiny mic because you're a tall guy, and yeah, I think sometimes if you put it up on the stand, up on the side there, you get a little lift. So yeah, yeah, just make sure the light's on.
Light is on. Thank you. Madam Chair, councilors, thank you for the presentation for tonight. The initial study was done approximately a year ago with Motiva that did a very early run through of the library and some of the challenges that we'll have. We realized that we needed a little more horsepower and expertise to really address a 50,000 square foot Fogelson Library, a 7,000 square foot forum auditorium, and the adjacent 5,000 square foot Southwest Annex to really create a 21st century library and community center. Thanks to Maria Sanchez Tucker, who identified RMKM that over the last 15 years has developed an amazing book of business and track record with libraries and similar facilities in Estancia, Taos, Albuquerque, White Rock. They came up and gave us a very robust and thorough presentation of the challenges of 21st century libraries, which have moved away from the stacks and periodicals that we are all used to growing up, and into open space and community areas and interactive computer labs and the sophisticated detail that you need to create such a thing. So they, along with Maxon Engineering, that'll do a complete assessment of the physical plant, which is shared between those three buildings in the basement of Fogelson. Planned architecture that'll do some adjacent landscaping designs and create a picture and a narrative that we can bring back to the governing body and the community to get feedback to see if we're on course with what Midtown plan will be for a community center and a library.
Okay, and I noticed there's money and kind of a work plan to do community engagement, and that'll happen at what stage in this phase one?
At the end of phase one, which is conceptual planning and design, that once we have, again, sort of a picture and a narrative and descriptions and 3 or 4 different storyboards with what we think we need for such a thing. It's part of we probably have about a 6-month timeline from approval to get to that point.
Okay, and phase one, so I assume like phase two might be the actual like construction, or
Yeah, well,
what,
you know,
Todd,
yeah,
can you
sure.
speak to the phases, like how many there are and what we do? And I guess the thing that I'm hearing and that I was concerning when I saw that we were hiring an architectural firm is I thought maybe we had already figured it all out and I'd missed something, but this is still, we're still trying to figure out what it is we need and want and get input on that so that it's still being formed or shaped, correct?
Absolutely, Chair, Counselor. What we're doing right now, we're working with an architectural firm. This firm is actually helping us with that initial phase of scoping, some schematic plans, assessing the actual building, and kind of helping us put together, that really a complete first step that's like a robust amount of information that we can use to engage the public through community engagement, to get their feedback on what our initial thoughts are, to engage leadership and get feedback from you. And all of that together in the end will result in kind of a final scope of work for an actual architectural plan for the development of the facility in the future. So this is a very preliminary kind of assessment and planning step, because it's with an architecture firm. It involves some design components. It kind of muddies the water a little bit, but we are really taking our first step into this and have a ways to go before we're not doing anything indelible or unchangeable. We're just trying to figure out what the opportunities are and what the best path forward is.
Okay, and so a phase two is likely what?
So if phase two for something like, so once we complete this step, we'll know exactly where we're headed. We'll have like a general concept of, kind of rough order magnitude pricing for the redevelopment of the facility, which would then inform what design costs are likely to be. And so step two would be to design a firm or a group of firms through an architect for the actual design of the redevelopment of the complex into that 21st century library and communities.
And then from there, like a phase three would be maybe where the construction. actually
Construction,
happens.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So this is maybe more in the mode of planning.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And scoping, I think is the word you used. And because we have a facility
Yes.
already, we need to look at what it needs and what it offers, and then where do we want to go and how does all that? together.
Exactly. It's a beautiful facility, but it is older. So, assessing the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, assessing it for where it might have ADA shortcomings or other structural issues, kind of thinking through what exists today and what the opportunities are to take advantage of what's there in a really meaningful and beneficial way for the community.
Okay, I got you. Other questions from the committee? Question, Counselor Castro, thanks for joining us tonight. Questions from you? Okay. Anything else you all wanted to add?
No, thanks very much. We're really excited to be working on this and are excited to come back with what we end up with at the end of this phase.
Great. So I did pull this, I'd move to approve. We have a motion and a second to approve. Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't go to Counselor Cassett. We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Counselor Cassett, I'm just gonna assume if your hand isn't up, you're good.
Yeah, if you don't see me, don't worry, I'll speak up.
Okay. Sorry you're not feeling well. If we could get a roll call on this item, please.
Certainly, Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Faulkner, Counselor Lee Garcia, Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Okay, on to item Q, request for approval of a professional services agreement with WSP USA Inc. to update the general plan and create a digital user platform in the total amount of $1,887,871.87, inclusive of New Mexico gross receipts tax for a 4-year term. We have our Deputy Director of Planning and Land Use, Heather Lamboy, tonight. Thank you. Oh, and our Director, Jason Klug. Thanks for joining us. I think this item was pulled by myself and I think Counselor Cassett. Counselor Cassett, did you want to start?
My brain's a little mushy. Why don't you go for it and see if you cover my questions?
All right. Again, just like the last item, I wanted to hear a little bit more about this and what's going on and how you're approaching it and what you're trying to achieve and just a little, more context, I guess.
Thank you, Counselor Chair Romero Worth and members of the Finance Committee. I do have a short presentation. I sort of anticipated this either now or at the governing body.
Terrific. Let's do it.
Jason and I worked together to pull this together. So if I'm going to start my PowerPoint, if IT can bring that up on the screen. So this represents a culmination of over a year-long process in starting to scope the request for proposals to now we have selected a contractor and we're bringing proposed contract to the governing body. There's a unique and rare opportunity here in that we are in the process of updating our zoning code at the same time, relatively speaking, as we will be with the general plan. The general plan is that 30,000 foot view level, where we identify our policies, our programs, our priorities, whereas the zoning code is more of that 10,000 foot level before you get down to the ground and building permit and going vertical. So this is an important component of how we define ourselves for the next 20 years. As you know, the last general plan was adopted in 1999 after a 5-year-long process at that time. And a lot has changed in our community. So in 1994, which was the reference number for the general plan at that time, we had 62,500 residents within the city of Santa Fe. That is not including Santa Fe County. And although Santa Fe County is different from us jurisdictionally, from a regional perspective, it is very much part of our shared experience. And so in 2020, we went up to 87,505 residents. And now in 2024, with a 0.72 annual growth rate, we're at 90,292 per estimate from the American Community Survey with the US Census Bureau. So with that 0.72 annual growth in 2045, we'll be over 150,000 residents at that time, excluding Santa Fe County. And so there's a lot to think about because not only are we growing as a community, but Santa Fe County is as well, in part because of our local policies and how we can, make change when it comes to affordable housing policy and getting more development, accommodating for development within the city boundary and not having to account for sprawl and less expensive options in the county. So what has changed since then, and since 1999? Well, the need for affordable housing has only increased. There's more regional interaction. For instance, Los Alamos, we're starting to feel the pinch from them in that Los Alamos has no place to grow, but the lab continues to grow. So we are getting more and more residents from Los Alamos and then other regions as well that come to Santa Fe to work. There's diversification in industry. Our arts community is thriving, as well as the film industry, which continues to grow and will be instrumental in the Midtown campus as well. And we need to find a place for those folks to live. COVID immigrants, and Santa Fe is a wonderful place to live. A lot of people discovered that they can effectively work from home. And so we actually had a little bit of an uptick during COVID in terms of the number of residents that we have here. Our median age has changed over time as well. In 2000, the average age was 40, and we are moving up to 45. And I have a feeling one of the reasons is because of those employment opportunities aren't as great for those folks who are straight out of college. Also, there are a lot of people who are employed here that can't live within the city of Santa Fe. And so that could also be a reason for the uptick. Those folks who are have a higher income can afford to live within the city of Santa Fe as they're more established in their careers. They have the ability to purchase property in town. So an overview of the project. The first portion of the project will be creating a digital platform. And it's important that we catch up with our peers in municipalities across the country and provide information quickly, seamlessly, and it can also have an overall impact on reducing people's frustration and getting public records requests just for a building permit and all of that sort of stuff. So the excuse me, the purpose for the digital platform is to help allay those concerns. So this isn't just a general plan project, but it's really a project to bring us more current with the availability of information we have. We sort of expanded the scope because typically with a general plan update or a comprehensive plan update, there is a website and there's engagement on the website and the like. But we felt, Jason Luke, Tom Graham, and I felt like we really need to be more accessible to our community. So phase 2 is community engagement, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. Phase 3 will be scenario planning, drafting of the general plan through the adoption process, creating an implementation plan. So where the rubber meets the road, we really, as we're gaining perspective on the zoning code update, as well as a general plan update, we're going to identify priorities. Unfortunately, with the 1999 general plan, there was a policy in there about checking in regularly with the governing body, showing progress, and that didn't happen. So with our implementation plan, hopefully this will make it more, provide more incentive for staff being able to have the time to report back to the governing body. Also, when it comes to fiscal priorities, the governing body will be able to better plan through an implementation plan. And that's from infrastructure to social programs, through senior services, through all sorts of different types of programs that the city, is involved with. And so, and finally, there will be a plan adoption. When we were drafting the RFP, there are three primary questions. What is missing and is where? So we have perceived challenges and we have real challenges. And what are our shared objectives? Because we're not the same community as we were in 1999. Who is it for and how will it help them? Well, we need to identify connections and sources of mutual benefit to the community. And that's within the city of Santa Fe, but also the broader regional community as well, to promote cohesion and take advantage of opportunities to enhance a shared sense of place. And what are we trying to deliver and how will it be provided? We are going to identify a balance of measures for implementation that best promote, benefit, incentivize livability, equity, health, and wellness across the spectrum of demographic and economic landscape. So one of the major themes of the general plan that wasn't on our radar at that time, wasn't really included in the general plan in 1999, is really being mindful of equity and inclusion and doing away with the sort of not so pretty past of planning and making sure we're mindful of all community members. So you may have a question is what is scenario planning? There's two tools that are available. Two tools that are available for scenario planning. And the first one is the digital twin. I know Councilmember Cassett knows much about it, but the really neat thing about creating a digital twin as part of our digital platform efforts is for the community to be able to envision what are things going to look like? How is it going to impact me? I look at plans all day long and I understand architecture and I understand urban design, but not all of our community members do. So this will be an effective tool for folks to be able to spend time on a website and almost, for me, because I'm a nerd, it's almost like playing a game. Wow, what is it going to look like if it's this? Or what is it going to look like if I do this? So that will help to inform our community engagement. Also, I was involved with the Urban Land Institute Reality Check. And this was an exercise that was done in Tampa Bay when I worked there. And there were maps that were set out on the table with lots of different groups from across the community, a wide diversity of stakeholders. And there were Legos that were placed on the maps. And those Legos represented, in this case, the blue represented jobs and the yellow represented people. And in that, what was required was, in the year 2045, we expect this many people. In 2045, we need to have this many jobs to employ those people and provide a sustainable living for those folks. So the tables got to work with the different scenarios and it's a given, we have kids, the area is going to grow no matter how much we like it today. So the opportunities were, the different options were dispersed, corridor, compact urban, or multiple centers. And in the multiple centers option, there was a lot of popularity with that, but the compact urban was one of the most popular options. And those folks who really were opposed to infill development really were able to understand the need for it in that particular case. So it'll be interesting to see how our community possibly can come around to understanding these ideas and what the reaction will be. So as to the proposed work plan and timeline, the consultant was attracted to the evaluation committee. I just managed the evaluation committee. It was the different committee members judged each of the applications. And actually we had a really great group of applicants and the decision was tough. But in this particular case, the consultant, WSP USA, actually suggested a tighter timeline in order to better align with phase 3 of the zoning code update. It's really critical that the zoning code update be consistent with the general plan so that there's not conflicting priorities. So that phase 3 for both projects will involve the two sets of consultants, Clarion, and in this case, if approved, WSP, And they will make sure that the two documents are consistent and will help to provide a clear direction to the future for Santa Fe. So in this particular case, there's the mobilization and understanding, that's the digital platform, as well as the background research. Step 2 is the vision and goals, and that's a sort of scoping and working with stakeholder groups to understand what our potential vision and goals will be. Scenario planning to flesh out the details. The development of a preferred plan, work program, and a funding plan. So the important thing about a general plan is you can have all sorts of great ideas, but how are we going to finance it? And I know that this committee deals with that regularly, so we need to be able to plan for it. And, you know, even if it's 5 or 10 years out. And then also governing body action. And I know that folks are, you know, interested in how are we going to do this? So here's a little more detail on how we're going to listen and learn from the community. We understand that the community has dealt with several challenges lately, and it's important to make sure every voice is heard, to make sure that we can have the opportunity to engage with people in a meaningful and mindful way as well. So there's open houses, but there's also going to be pop-up type of options, soccer games, the recreation center. We're going to be trying to capture as many opinions as possible. And of course, the digital framework, you know, well done in other communities has really gotten a lot of feedback. We also have a lot of different local organizations like Chainbreakers and others, grassroots organizations, where there will be a stipend opportunity so that maybe if they would prefer just to talk amongst themselves, we'll have a toolkit and then they'll be able to report back to city staff. So that allows for maybe some more genuine engagement instead of having to report to a staff member if that is their preference. So there's a lot of advisory, a technical advisory committee will be involved throughout the entire process, which will be composed of community members as well as other stakeholders. And then, of course, the city staff will be engaged. Daniel Alvarado, as well as a new strategic planner, would be helping out with that effort. And I'll be project managing, of course, Jason and the entire planning team will be thoroughly engaged with this project, and we're excited about it. So ultimately, the deliverables are assessment reports. You know, that will be the first stage. So getting the digital platform going, as well as, so where are we? What are the big things that we need to address? The general plan document, the implementation plan, which includes financing, you know, thought about financing and how do we move forward over a longer period of time. And then, of course, a map series. So like the future land use map, when the governing body sees cases about a general plan amendment. The hope is in the future, we won't have to amend the general plan as much, just because a general plan is not intended to be amended all the time. And so we need to be thoughtful about how our future land use categories can accommodate for the different types of development we envision across. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. The strategic planner you mentioned, the city did hire that person, or is that different?
Romero Worth, we've been through an interview process and offered the job to somebody who has not yet accepted.
Okay,
But it's in process.
you're getting close.
Getting-
And that position is the one that you referenced towards the end here about engaging that person in this process.
Yes, that's
Okay, didn't know if they were separate or the same, so, okay. And I guess, so you mentioned the last general plan took 5 years to come to fruition. This looks like, this looks like 3 fiscal years, and then you mentioned something about 10 years. What, like, I mean, if all went well, what are we talking about here?
Romero Worth in the 1990s, and I was involved in that project as well. Things were a little bit different in that it was a lot of open houses, a lot of community engagement. I know Reed Liming, who was the project manager at that time, we had some challenges with the consultant. I have faith that this consultant will move things along really well. So the way community engagement is defined now, it makes it more efficient. So, and we've laid the groundwork with the zoning code update this fall. The governing body will be seeing phase 1, where we've done the code hygiene to make it more understandable, more readable. And we've gotten a lot of feedback on that already. So the folks out there, when they're speaking about the zoning code, really are sort of hungry to speak about the general plan. So we already have an idea of some of the big issues that we're going to be dealing with. So I think that'll give us a little bit of a leg up on that.
And you mentioned a technical working group. We have a technical working group already on the code update. Will that transfer over to this, or this is going to be a new group?
Chairman Romero, we're certainly those folks, because we have two. We have the Technical Advisory Committee and folks-
Citizens, right?
and the Citizens Advisory.
Right.
This is going to be a large time commitment, so we can't assume everybody has the available time. But if they're interested, of course, they will, be welcome on this project. But we also, will have other folks who have already expressed interest in being part of this.
And will there be a community technical group, or not a technical group, but a community group like we've had with the code update? Or is this much more technical and really more appropriate for?
Chairman Marworth, we haven't decided that yet.
Okay.
It has, from the template of the zoning code update, has worked well. And, that's something that we have to define as we go forward.
Okay. And this would get underway when? Does it start July 1st? Is it, or right away, or?
Yes, the intent is to start it right away, because we did have some money budgeted this year. The process for procurement and all of that took longer than we hoped, and no fault of anybody for that matter. So it's just, governmental processes. And so we're hoping to capture the funding from this year. And Jason has spoken with different folks who are involved in finance, as well as, with our department leadership. And we are hoping to roll over the money from this fiscal year and combine it with next fiscal year's funding to get everything done by the end of next fiscal year for that amount.
Okay, Counselor Cassett, want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Director Lamboy, for being here. And thank you for the presentation. It actually covered a lot of what I was looking at. I know you and I have spoken, and so I just wanted to make sure to have the conversation around public engagement. And I was really happy to hear that, as I've said, learning the lessons of the Midtown Engagement Partners and how incredibly successful that was in getting a lot of buy-in and reaching different populations. And so I'm really eager to see that be utilized here for the general plan update. That was really my main question, was if that model would be used, and you answered it in the presentation. So very much looking forward to getting that going. And I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Counselor Puldis. Appreciate the presentation. Obviously, it gives us a little bit better of understanding kind of where we're going with this, because I think a lot of times when I hear from people in the community, there's two different sets of people. Some that want everything to stay the way it was, and the others that see the direction and the progress of a city that is inevitably going to change. I guess just based on the conversation, a couple of questions around the company. Did we have? It looks like WSP is definitely a company that's nationwide. It's a pretty large company.
Garcia, that is correct. And they're nationwide. They have a local office in Albuquerque. And also they're going to collaborate with Design Workshop as well.
Design Workshop? Who is
Yes,
that?
which they're out of Albuquerque. Design Workshop has done other plans as well for the city.
And again, I think that's just important that we do have somebody who understands our local community. Obviously, many times, again, the conversation is that, how do we take one of the oldest cities in America and recreate it, so to speak? That's a difficult thing because, when we look at densities, and this is right up the alley of zoning changes and what goes where, and do we have commercial amenities, and do we have mixed use type of living situations, and so on and so forth. And I think it really is important to have somebody that does understand or really does know the demographics of this 400-year-old city. And so I think, can you just elaborate a little bit on Clarion? You said Clarion was another company that they would work with?
The actually Clarion is the zoning code update.
Clarion is, okay,
They're out of Denver, Colorado.
okay.
So- And you'll see in the RFP packet or RFP technical response that WSP provided, the list of the folks who are involved, and Chris Geddes, Nick Fazio, a lot of folks who are very familiar with the city are part of that.
How many people did we get to apply for this RFP, do you know?
Chair Member Garcia, we had 4 technical responses.
We landed on WSP mainly. Can you give me a couple of the top reasons why we landed on WSP?
Yes, the digital platform was one of the comments that was made by the evaluation committee. That's important because we can really make progress on, and I do have some example websites. If you want to look at them, I can email them to you.
Sure.
So the WSP was the one that responded the best in terms of their vision for the digital platform. The other respondents did not understand the depth of the digital platform, typically with the general plan update. There's a web page to do the engagement, but we wanted something that was living and could be owned by the city going forward so that we have that tool for our community. So, and the other was, of course, the technical aspects and how well they responded. There were a series of questions the evaluation committee came up with for the oral presentations. And WSP answered those questions the best, and were very comprehensive in their responses.
Thank you. I just like to learn a little bit more about them, and obviously spending some time on the planning commission and understanding how the zoning code and all that works. And again, our community members that, you know, how do we just create a city that continues to progress, but also doesn't lose who we are. And so I think that's one of the biggest difficulties in moving forward. So no more questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Faulkner.
Just want to commend staff. I know this is, when I was serving on the planning commission, this is a big priority. And so I know it's going to be a heavy lift for you guys, but I think your community engagement, I really appreciate that. You guys know that's always been important to me, is that the community gets involved in some of the decisions that are being made on their behalf. So I wouldn't mind maybe a little more reporting back as we move through the process, just to keep us on the same page.
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, Heather.
Chairwoman
Director Lamboy, sorry.
Yes. We work together, Jason and I, but, and so he reminded me, yes, we're going to be having reports every quarter on the progress of the general plan update to the governing body. And of course, we'll be collaborating closely with the planning commission for the entire process. And they have identified, they have a policy subcommittee. And so that we'll be working with some key representatives. And Councilor Faulkner was part of that.
Right, okay. Counselor Cassett, your hand was up and then it went down.
I was just mentioning that we had discussed at one point bringing updates to quality of life, but it sounds like if they're going to the full governing body, that will not be necessary. So that was all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Is there a motion? Second. Motion and a second to approve this item, and I don't see anybody waving at me. If we could get a roll call, please.
Certainly. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Okay, we are on to item W, request for approval to dispose of 11 fleet vehicle associated equipment via government to government transfer with the Anthony Police Department, Magdalena Marshal's Office, and the State of New Mexico Corrections Department in accordance with the Santa Fe Police Department's fleet replacement policy. And we have Deputy Chief of Police Ben Valdez with us, and I believe Councilor Lindell, you pulled this item? Okay. All right.
Thanks for coming down today. So my understanding is that we look at the fleet and we offer the vehicles, whatever vehicles are possible, to other departments within the city.
Madam Chair, yes, Counselor. So when we do our assessment, the first ones that get an opportunity to have the vehicles transferred are within the city. So we let our fleet department know within our finance department what vehicles that we're planning on disposing of based on the policy. And then we ask them if there's needs that they have in their department. And oftentimes they'll ask for either a certain type of vehicle that'll fit their needs. And then if we have that vehicle, they will get the first offering of that. Once that's done, throughout the year, we do get requests from outside government agencies who also have dire needs, and there's a couple here that we included in this request. And in the absence of that, then we will dispose of them via public auction. So we go through kind of a tiered system to, first of all, see if the city can utilize those in other capacities. And then if there are any pending requests that we've received throughout the year, then we can ask if they still have a need for those vehicles. And then we ask them to give those letters.
Vehicles, it looks like there's 11 of them. Is that right?
Yes, Councilor, that's the 11 that we're requesting to transfer to a other government agency, but in total, we have 34 vehicles that we're requesting to dispose of. And
Right.
on the caption, I was looking at the caption and it seemed confusing, but we're asking to dispose of 34 fleet vehicles, and of those 34, 11 we're requesting to go to other government agencies.
So, none of these vehicles, are I'm looking at the other vehicles on the list, although my computer's having a very hard time loading that list right now. I'm seeing part of the list. And it looks like a lot of them that are being, of the 34, a fair number of them are wrecked. What does redlined mean?
Councilor, red line means that the vehicle either has a major mechanical issue or there is damage to it that's going to be more expensive to repair and to keep on the road. And at that point, it's not a worthwhile investment for us to repair it and keep it on the fleet. So if it's redlined, that could be due to the engine failure. It could be the transmission failure, or if it has some type of damage that's going to be really costly. If it's wrecked, that means it's beyond repair. There's nothing we can do.
Okay, so it looks like the majority of them are redlined or they're already wrecked. 11 of them we're looking to put somewhere else. How many of them, are going to other city departments? That's the part that I had that I can't find.
Let me pull that up real quick, Counselor. So we have a couple, and I'll go down the list and just put them.
It looks like we have 2, 4, 6, 7 of them that are going to different departments.
Yes, on this list, we have 7 that are, that were put out there, and folks from other departments requested them. They include a couple of sedans, a pickup truck, a van, an SUV. The vast majority are gonna be sedans. I know the biggest thing that people have asked for are the SUVs. I know Park Division, they make good use of them because they have all-wheel drive and that kind of stuff. They have been informed that as we're getting more fleet, we have fleet that's going to be offloaded probably in the next year or so, so there may be other opportunities. I know streets and Parks and Rec, they really have a need for pickup trucks. So some of our pickup trucks are no longer suitable for police use. Those oftentimes live on within those departments to help them get those things done. And I know Parks is going to be getting one of the SUVs to help take their staff to work sites.
Yeah, I just don't understand why we're giving SUVs, Explorers or SUVs, correct? Why we're giving SUVs to other police departments when it really kind of looks like we have a need in our own fleet to have some of those vehicles. I don't get it. Or why wouldn't we sell them? They have to be worth some money.
So that's a great question, Counselor. All these vehicles were offered up to all city departments.
Tell what?
They were offered up to all city departments, so they had an opportunity to have them transferred. And
No one asked for them.
they didn't want those ones because they wanted a different setup. I know our PSA trucks, they're going to be coming up for replacement in about the next 1.5 to 2 years. Those are an item that a lot of city departments are already asking for. So we're already taking the list to see where they can go so they can continue on. And some of these cars, again, looking at some of the mileage, once it meets that threshold, close to 100,000 miles, over 5 years, that's when we start looking at getting them off the road because of reliability issues, especially in the event of an emergency response. But all these vehicles, again, this is a request. I did include in the memo that if the governing body would like to have us just auction them, that's an option as well. Again, these are requests made to us by 3 government agencies because of the challenges they're facing. I know the Magdalena Sheriff's or Magdalena Marshal's Office, they made the request back in December because they had, I'd say if not all, but at least half of their fleet at a minimum vandalized, and they have no police cars out there. They're on the list to get vehicles received from the Ford dealership, but because of the supply chain issue, they're facing challenges. In addition, the Anthony Police Department, the chief, she requested a couple of units because she was blessed with some additional funding for police officers, but they won't be able to get them on the road without our assistance. So again, these are just requests. Either way, they're out of our fleet. It just is dependent on how we would like to see them disposed and what the will of the governing body will be in that area.
See a 2016 Ford Taurus with 148,000 miles going to the airport. And then on the list, I see a newer Ford Taurus with half the miles designated for the Anthony Police Department. Why would that be?
Well, it just depends on the condition of the vehicle because the mileage could be deceiving to some point. If it has 140,000 miles, like my last car had 160,000 miles on it. It's a lot of commuting miles. I commute 5 days a week, sometimes more than that, sometimes twice a day if need be. So it may have high mileage, but it's in good condition. So the mileage isn't indicative of the condition it's in, but it'll at least help that department get to where they need to be in the next year or so to get vehicles for their folks. But for our city staff, we have offered them, again, the pick of the litter. If they want the vehicles that they find desirable, they get the first choice and they can let us know which ones they want to receive. And we go through that tiered system.
So when we sold cars before, and maybe this is for you, Miss Oster, what do we have any idea what kind of money we got for used police cars?
Counselor, so I'll say right now, because of the way that we take care of our fleet, and a lot of it is in credit to quality of vehicles we're buying now, and also the maintenance that's being done by our city departments. we received a greater yield when we sent them off to auction. I know years ago, when we used to have Chevy Impalas, they'd go for as little as $200 a car, and the most we would get is $700 a car. With the last auction that we did, I know some of the cars, even one that was wrecked, we got a couple $1,000s, somewhere around $3,000 to $4,000 for a car that had heavy damage, and they're using it for parts because, again, it's helpful for folks to do that. On average, most sedans were going for about anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000 per car, and SUVs were closer to about the $7,000 to $8,000 mark. The vehicles that did really well were pickup trucks. I know our animal services trucks, you'd have some that had over 100,000 miles, some close to 200,000 miles. And they're getting bids on them anywhere from about $15,000 to $20,000. So that was a huge return on our investment when we did that. It just kind of depends on the make and model of the vehicle and if it's able to, continue on in service. But again, if it's a truck that has a diesel engine, it may have high mileage and that kind of stuff, but with a little bit of TLC, they could get it back up on the road and running. So a lot of that's a testament to the way that we maintain our cars. Again, if it's wrecked, there is still some value to it because they can part out those items and go from there. But it's a stark difference from what we used to have from about 10 to 15 years ago when we were offloading on them.
Just from the numbers that you just gave us, which, believe me, I know that it's off the top of your head and my math is also off the top of my head. I'm coming up with these 11 vehicles are probably somewhere in the area of $80,000. Because a lot of them are SUVs. And I'm not sure that we don't have a use for $80,000 for some other equipment in the police department.
Counselor, we certainly love to see that come back to our budget. The fact of the matter is the money from these auctions goes back in the general fund. So if,
There's plenty of things in the general fund that we have a use for 80. I mean, I was giving you the benefit of the doubt and you tossed it back to me. So I got somewhere I can spend 80,000 for sure.
absolutely, if you could help us get people to the auction, that'd be great. But again, this is just a request from an agency that we're trying to help out. Again, we are the capital city of the state, and we're trying to share our goodwill with other folks so they can serve their communities.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that it's I don't know if that gets into any kind of anti-donation clause of any, if that's a problem, I have no idea. But I think that at $80,000, we probably could use that. And so
Counselor, just,
I'm not gonna support this.
and that's okay, but just to clarify, it's not against any anti-donation clause. This is something that's permitted in statute, and that's why we're bringing it before the governing body. This is one way that we can dispose of vehicles. Again, it's not the only way. We will carry out the will of the governing body and what you would like to see done with that. We just need to dispose of them because after a period of time, it's gonna become more expensive for our department to maintain them. We just wish to dispose of them.
I understand that and I appreciate it. I think that probably, we've made some real improvements in how we handle vehicles, like with the auction, thanks to the finance department. So, I'm not gonna support this and, I'll yield the floor, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Have you done a cost benefit of what it takes to auction them? I mean, in terms of, there's got to be some expense there versus giving them away to other cities versus, I don't know. I mean, there's some cost in auctioning them, and I think the auction that we did last year was pretty significant, took a lot of staff time. Probably not something we're not doing every year. And so maybe these vehicles aren't really positioned to be part of an auction. And I don't know if it's worth doing an auction for 11 cars. I just wonder about that.
Madam Chair, so we're going to be disposing of 34 total. So if they are going to be auctioned, we'll just put into that workflow. There is a cost benefit. So if we do help out another agency with transferring vehicles over to them, there's less stuff that we have to decommission from the vehicle. They'll still continue on in a public safety. So there is a cost benefit to that. You also hit it on top of the auction that takes place. A lot of staff has to go through, but it's going to be similar either way. Again, it's a good way for us to share some goodwill with folks that are in a troubling situation. We were in the same situation a couple years ago with supply chain and vehicles. So for us, we're disposing of them in either case, and we will carry that out, whatever the recommendation is going to be. But what I do ask is if it's not recommended to transfer them, then just if an amendment can be made, say that we're going to dispose of all 34 via public auction. And that is outlined in the amendment.
Yeah, and I don't know that we can do amendments here on contracts. That's gotten us tripped up before. Counselor Lee Garcia.
you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions from that conversation. When we purchase vehicles for your department, where does the money come from? Where is the money appropriated from?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, so the money for us is budgeted every year for vehicle replacement. And that helps us maintain our reserve fleets. Right now, we're trying to build ours back up. But that is what's allocated. It's not like a one-year appropriation unless we have to make up on vehicles that were not purchased, which we did do in 2022. In 2022, there were 2 allocations to get us caught back up where we should have been had the pandemic not occurred. They were struggling with the challenge of supply chain issues at that point, and that's where we had those one-time purchases for those times. But any other budget cycle, it is included in our budget, so we can take care of those replacements that need to be done.
Yes, my question more is directed toward what's the funding source or where's the revenue come from?
And these are capital dollars, right? Director Oster, could you answer that question?
Yeah,
Madam Chair and councilors, these are general fund dollars that are being appropriated to police as part of their annual budget for vehicle replacement.
so general fund dollars, but I guess where I'm headed with this is it through GRT? Is that a revenue source? Is it capital funds that come from the state? Is it
Madam
That's-
Chair and councilors, Councilor Garcia, so it's from our city general fund, so it's not state resources that we're using under normal circumstances to purchase vehicles for police.
Okay, so I mean, and ultimately, our revenue sources are GRT, our revenue sources are what we impose with fees and stuff, And so again, it still comes back to taxpayer dollars, and I think that just kind of going with, where we generate the money from to purchase these vehicles, and therefore justifying if we were to help another entity out throughout the state, obviously it's another, although it's not Santa Fe, it's somewhere else. So just kind of wanted to get my head around that. Thank you. No more questions, Madam Chair.
So just to clarify, that the money is not from the GRT that like we're going to be talking about in a little bit here. The portion of GRT that's set aside for capital expenditures. These vehicles are not coming out of that pot of money.
Madam Chair and councilors, the police budget annually includes funds for vehicle replacement.
Okay, so the budget we just passed had a certain percentage of dollars set aside for what you were talking about, getting the fleet back up and that, so we've been chipping away at that for a while.
Yes, Madam Chair.
And also being more cognizant of how long we have these vehicles in service and making sure that we are replacing them at regular intervals so that they are operating at their highest level for the work you do.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, other questions? Counselor Castro.
Sorry, thank you so much. And just to follow up a little bit on that question, Councilor Merrill-Worth. Thank you, DP Valdez. Would you tell us a little bit about how cars get decommissioned? You mentioned that they're in pretty good condition and we take pretty good care of them, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Castro, yes, so most of these vehicles, because of the type of vehicles we buy, they're heavy duty use, so they come with equipment that they can be driven for long hours, they can deal with, potholes, that kind of stuff. Heavy duty cooling system, transmission, brakes, you name it. So that way they can stand up to the rigors of police work. That's the benefit of us purchasing vehicles that are designed, or actually equipped for police work. When there have been times where we couldn't do that, or we bought a vehicle that was maybe not as well equipped, we don't see as much resale value in them. So these vehicles are desirable to a lot of folks because when they come up to auction, they know that we take care of our cars. They've been well maintained. They're usually on a maintenance interval. So even though it may have a number of miles, folks know that they can still continue on and utilize them in other areas. But once they get to that point, for us, they don't meet the criteria that we have to make sure that they could be frontline units. So that's why we need to replace them and have them on a certain schedule, because after a certain point in time, we started seeing issues with reliability, or the cost for repair start to increase due to the frequency of need to get that done. So at that point, that's when we look to dispose of.
You mentioned that we were in the same situation when we couldn't get parts. Did we receive any vehicles from other agencies?
No, we did not. We've had to do it on our own. I think it was a lot of folks on this council and folks in the city that helped make that happen. And just put it into context, during COVID, usually we purchased anywhere from 25 to 30 vehicles a year. And when COVID hit and we had to tighten our belts, we bought 7 cars one year. And we got back on that schedule about a year and a half later from that point. And then we're contending with the supply chain issues. And a lot of those purchases that were approved back in 2022, we're just finally getting the tail end of those orders getting delivered now in 2024. That kind of lets you know that it's helpful for us to have those things, kind of like a warehouse or stock house where you have supplies ready to go. So as you're using supplies, you're taking off the shelf, and you have other supplies on order. It's kind of just circulating through. That's something that we have to do with our vehicles, parts, and equipment to make sure if we need to make a repair or something fails and has to be replaced, that we have adequate supplies so we can keep that vehicle on the street and in service.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just one more question. I'm starting to get a little nervous up here. You mentioned commuter miles. Do you have an estimate of how many commuter miles we have on our vehicles?
Counselor, I don't have it, but I can tell you this much. I'd say the vast majority of our folks live out of the city. And frankly, it's a bit discouraging. You know, to put in context, I know most people will criticize those of us that commute back and forth, but I can't speak for the department, but I can share my experience. I've been commuting for about 19 years. That's 2 hours a day, an hour each way, 5 days a week. We're talking 10 hours a week that I could be spending time with my family. I could be going to the gym. I could be doing other things except for commuting. But when the city that I was born in, that my family still lives in, needs me, I'm in that car. I'm coming here to help where I can. So just because folks don't live in the city doesn't mean that they're less dedicated. Again, my family and how I provide for them, it just was not possible when I started here 19 years ago. And I've remained committed, kept my word, because I said, hey, I'll give you 20 years at a minimum. And that's what I intend to do. So.
Thank you so much. I see the floor.
Okay, do we have a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Can we get a roll call, please, Director Oster?
Certainly. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor, Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Sorry. Mike was off. We have one more item, item AA, request for approval of American Rescue Plan Act Recovery Funds, sub-recipient contract amendment number 1 to item number 23-0501 with F, is it LL or II? FLL?
AI.
I'm sorry, say again.
Madam Chair, it's II.
FII, okay. National Doing Business As Up Together to extend the contract to June 30th, 2026 and extend the 12-month program for GED certifications for reoccurring access to funds based on emergent community needs. And we have Director Julie Sanchez with us, Youth and Family Services Division Director. Thanks for being here. I pulled this item mostly like a couple of the others tonight to get some context to understand what we're doing here. you may have brought this information to the Quality of Life Committee, I don't know, but I am not up to speed on what's happening here. And Up Together is a new group that we're working with, or no? Because this is a contract amendment, we've already been working with them. Okay, so maybe catch us up.
Madam Chair, committee members. So we've been working, so the previous contract was actually the Family Independence Initiative, FII, and we first began our relationship with them during the beginning of the pandemic. So they were the organization that we went with who helped disperse nearly close to 5 million in CARES Act cash assistance to community members who were impacted by the pandemic. We continued that relationship now with ARPA money, doing again a cash transfer program for those individuals in our community that continue to be impacted both by the pandemic, and they also do our direct cash transfer program for our eviction prevention fund. As you know, to date, and actually we have an evaluation going on. This is a very complex program. So not only is there a program going on, but the county has also contributed to this contract. And so the county put in approximately $1 million of their ARPA funding for members in the county as well. We do have an evaluation on the program. Interestingly enough, there are 3 direct cash transfer programs happening. So one of them is one time. The second one is 9 months. And the third one is a 12-month program. And so what we're working on is evaluating how folks, what cash transfer program allows people to be better off in the situation in which they had to access cash transfers. And so that study is through UNM, and they're working closely with myself, Up Together, as well as our navigators in the Connect network to evaluate the program. And then just some brief numbers. So far, because we had to put things on hold for the amendment, about 800,000 has been distributed out into the community. This probably comes as no surprise, but roughly about 67% of our applicants are women. The average household size is about 3. And a majority of the folks accessing this funding, and there is an eligibility criteria. 69% are Hispanic, 29% are white, 4% are Black or African American, and roughly about 6% are tribal members, so they're Native American. The program, because we had to do a contract amendment and it took quite a while, we're looking at extending the program for the next 1.5 years to make sure that we expend all of our ARPA money, and then make sure that we also have enough time to get the evaluation up and going. And evaluations are not very time consuming. So it'll give us enough time.
Okay, and tucked in here, according to the memo, is also 500,000 for the mayors for a guaranteed income program.
So Madam Chair, committee members, that's the 12-month program.
Okay. How come you didn't call it Mayors for Guaranteed Income?
The entire program?
Well, I don't know, it seems like we should, that drew my attention because this is the second tranche of dollars for this program, correct? So we're going to work with a new group of families.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, I think that's kind of important. And again, maybe this you've talked about at Quality of Life. So just, what happened with that first group and the successes that we're seeing there. And then this is a second group. I'm not sure how many people you're going to be able to reach, that kind of thing. Because we're not always going to have ARPA dollars to put towards this, and just understanding, what that money has done, and is it working? Is it valuable? Is it something, we want to continue to look for additional dollars, to keep it going? I don't know.
So Madam Chair, we're actually just finalizing our evaluation through UPenn on that first cohort. We should be getting it done. We were hoping to get it released actually by the end of this month, but it's looking like it'll probably come out in June. And that program had approximately 100 student parents. The outcomes were quite favorable. It was really surprising. It's not, from a data perspective, it's not surprising given the population we were serving, which was young student parents, majority of which were locals, many generations who had lived in this community, and quite a few tribal members. There were also quite a few folks who were immigrants in mixed status households. And the data that was presented was really interesting, mainly because there were things that you didn't anticipate. So for example, a lot of students invested in their homes. They invested in their family's land. They invested in their community. They invested in helping other family members. It was a really, it makes sense because we as a community, we're small enough that we rely on each other and support each other. And the data was really showing that in that first 100 student parents. And of course, some of the outcomes that we did expect, student parents were able to quit if they had multiple jobs. They were able to spend more time with their children. They were able to get into better housing situations, and actually able to maintain those after 6 months. And then of course, the big outcome, which we were all hoping for, was that students in that 1 year time frame were able to graduate from the community college with their degree or certification. And those who had not yet graduated were able to continue on to their education and felt hopeful for the future. So we'll be doing a much more formal presentation once that data set is released.
Okay, that's helpful, because I feel like you should lead with, this is the Mayor's for a Guaranteed Income Program. I mean, yeah, you did lead with the fact that it's complicated, but just bringing that piece of it up to the surface, I think, it's helpful, and I was interested. Other questions from the committee? Councilor Lindell.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Sanchez. When that evaluation is complete, will you be sure that all of us get a copy of that?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
Other questions? Is there a motion? To approve. We have a motion from Councilor Faulkner, second from Councilor Lindell, and if we could get a roll call, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell, Councilor Faulkner, Councilor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Romero Worth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. So that was the last item pulled off of consent. We do not have any discussion items tonight. We do not have an executive session, so we'll go to matters from staff. Director Oster, do you have anything for us?
No, not this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, matters from the committee. Okay, matters from the chair. Our next meeting is Monday, June 10th. And with that, we are adjourned until the next meeting at 6:30. Thank you, everyone.